Hello and welcome back to Polytoots. In today's tutorial we're going to be taking a look at how to recreate this Zelda Breath of the Wild style of explosion, and this has been made with both Amplify and Shader Graph, as you can see over here. For the sake of the tutorial we are only going to be recreating the Shader Graph one, but all of the source files for both Amplify and Shader Graph are freely available over on my Patreon. So feel free to go and grab that if there's anything that you just want to have a look at. The only other thing to mention before we get started is we're really only going to be covering the Breath of the Wild Explode Smoke shader and how that ties in to the particle system itself. Everything else I will give a quick mention to throughout the tutorial, but they're not essential. This fire and smoke is the main component of this tutorial, but again, if you want to have a look at how everything has been built, then by all means go and grab the package and yeah, just check it out, I guess. So yeah, okay, I mean, if that tickles you in all the right places, then feel free to continue watching. To begin, let's just have a quick rundown as to what is actually happening here. So we have a distort shockwave. You see this quite a lot. The hemisphere burst, this is one of the initial kind of bursts, I guess. I don't know why it's called hemisphere though. It's a sphere. I'm going to change that right now, live. There you go. We have the sparks for when it all just flies out. We have embers, and these collide with the world, but at the moment I believe they disappear before they get there. There is of course the fire and smoke that we'll be creating in the tutorial. There is also a particle light here, which has a point light as a child. Now the point light is disabled because that's how it works. If it was turned on, then it would always be on. But this is basically being controlled by the particle system, so pretty good. When the particle pops, the light turns on. And then lastly we have this rays and a big dot flash, and when you put them all together you get a nice bit of kaboom boom, kaboom boom, kaboom boom, you know what I mean. So yeah, as I mentioned, we are only going to be covering the smoke portion, the fire and smoke. So to begin with, let's just grab this shader and delete it. Okay, so now if we take a look at what we've got going on here, it's just a pink mess of missing material, and that's okay because we're going to be creating one. So let's just create a shader, and it's going to be universal render pipeline, and we're going to go with an unlit shader graph. And let's just call this SG Breath of the Wild Explode. And let's open it up. First thing that we're going to want to do is just turn on alpha clip. This is pretty essential. And let's go ahead and grab ourselves a texture sample, sample texture 2D. I always get that mixed up the wrong way around. And from here we can just grab a texture 2D asset, which I can convert to a property. And I'm going to rename this just as, call it smoke texture. Call it whatever you want, but if we just go ahead and yeah, let's just plug this straight into the base color now so we can just take a look at the mess that this is going to make. In fact, I will also just plug that into alpha. And we need to get our material. So before it was using one with the shader on it, which the shader doesn't exist anymore. So let's go ahead and shader graphs. There it is. And let's select our texture. Okay, so there's two things that I just want to talk about real quick. One, people keep reminding me in the comments, you can change the directory here. So I could say polytoots/sg/particles. And now if I save this and come over here, you can see that now it's no longer in the shader graphs menu. Instead, it exists within Polytoots. So there we go, where it should be. And secondly, this texture is obviously quite unique. And it's pretty simple to do if you have any kind of 3D software. So I was just using Blender. This is just, it's just a random sculpt, just, push some things out, crease in some edges. And I think all I did was went into like an orthographic camera, or not even orthographic, it might just be, front on, and just took a screenshot of it basically. And from there, I came into Photoshop, and so something like this is, closer to like the original screenshot. And I'm using that as like my red channel, which will be the actual smoke. And my green channel, which is just, it's kind of just like an inverted version of the red with just some, boosted values. So this one in the green channel, this is going to be, the fire, the heaty, orangey explosion stuff. And then the blue channel, this is going to be my alpha. And yeah, there is a bit of a seam here, but it's all good. And this was just created, I think, with some noise. And I used like the filter for polar coordinates probably, and you know, just masked it off with the original one. And then I just put in some white little dots here, which we'll see come into action probably a little bit later, just to help, you know, how the alpha actually fades out. So, and that combined gives you a weird looking texture. So, you know, that's that. Texture is included. You don't have to go and make it yourself if you just want to play around with this. Let's go ahead and start doing some cool stuff to this. And I'm just going to expand this out. We can see it bigly. And for here, we might as well get this just so we know what we're doing. Just plug in the Zelda smoke here. Because if you remember, I was talking about, you know, the RGB. In fact, alpha, we don't even use it. It's the B that we use for the alpha. So my mistake there. So yeah, red channel is our smoke. Green channel is going to be our fire. So what we can do is if I was to just hook the red channel there, and actually before I do that, let's get this working with the particle system. So I'm going to get a vertex color, and I need to split this, and I'm going to multiply the alpha of our texture, which is using the blue channel, with the alpha of the vertex color. So, you know, we need to get a multiply, and I'm going to alpha for the vertex color and the B, which is the channel we're using, and that is going to go into the alpha. And we have the, if you remember right at the beginning, we changed this to use alpha clip. This is crucial to this kind of effect, and the threshold will probably need to change, but for now let's just leave it at 0.5. And the other thing I need to do, and I'm going to tidy this all up as we move on, but we're going to just grab, let's say, the R channel, which is our smoke, and all of the vertex color, so you know it's RGB. So this will allow us to control the color. Either way, there's that, and I'm just going to give this a quick save just to have a look at what it's doing like right now. So yeah, if we take a look at this, it's pretty interesting already. You can tell like right at the start of the effect that we're not getting like the full image, you know, with the actual smoky image. Like if I were to come up here and just, you know, something like this is what we're supposed to be seeing, but it's already being alpha'd out. And that's probably in part to do with the alpha clip threshold. We can try and lower this. So let's try 0.2. So yeah, we get some of it back, but it's still a bit, it's not quite right. So one way to just fix that real quick is we're just going to boost the power. I'm just going to multiply this by 4. That should do. Although, and again, this is, let's just throw in a saturate just to be safe, because these values are probably getting a little bit blown out if we're multiplying them by 4. Okay, so that's, you know, that's a little better. We're getting more of the smoke appear. And you see the way that it just disappears, like it's dissolving. That is basically all to do with the alpha clip. In that, sorry for the mess, we will expand a bit. If we were to just disable alpha clip, I am not sure why these have, hang on a minute, what's going on? Change this, I don't know. I'm going to restart Unity in a second, but let's just have a look at this. So I've disabled alpha clip, I think. I don't know what's going on. And now let's take a look at this. You can see, you know, it's a completely different effect. You know, it's fading off very slowly. You know, it is actually doing a fade rather than being like cut off. Because cut off is a, you know, it's a 0 to 1. It's either visible or invisible, whereas regular transparency is has more in between. I'm back, and hopefully everything else is okay. So yeah, we're going to set this back to opaque and turn alpha clip back on, and then just save this. And you can see, you know, the difference is night and day, as they say. Now we need to think a little bit about the actual, like the fire, because we have R channel, which was our smoke, and the B channel, which was our alpha, and all of that is, you know, working fine. The thing that we don't have is the green channel. We're not using that yet, so we might as well go and use that now. And the first thing I want to do is multiply the green channel. I'm going to use a color node, and we'll convert this into a property. And, oh, these have gone the other way around, fair enough. And then, yeah, we want to make sure that the mode of this color is HDR. And by default, let's just put it as white, because otherwise I guess it will come out black. We're going to be changing the color anyway, but for now that's fine, and we can just hide that. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to make a lerp. So what's going to happen is it's going to kind of, you know, either be the fire or the smoke, and it will just, you know, change in between. So we put the fiery channel at the top and the smoky channel on the bottom. And just as an example, if I get a float, and I'm going to turn this into a property and make it a slider. And that's going to be what controls the lerp. Oh, the other thing I just want to do, since it's a HDR value, we might as well just give it a bit of a intensity by default, and we'll save that. And so now, if we come over here, we can see that it is, you know, the fire, and we can use the float to turn it back into smoke. It does this and that. Now, of course, we don't want to manually animate this every time that we want our, you know, fire to turn to smoke. We want it to work with the particle system, and that's where the custom data will come into play. And I have done a tutorial on this before, but I can't remember which one it was, and it doesn't matter because it's very, very simple. Let's get rid of our float here and put this back up there. And just so I don't forget, I'm just going to get rid of it there just so we don't end up with duplicates. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a UV node, and we're going to split this. And even though it says RGBA here, what this will translate to for us will be the XYZW. So let me just plug this in here, and we'll save this. And what this is doing is we're telling, like, rather than the slider we were using before, we're using the, you know, the Z channel of a UV to control it. So we can come to the renderer of our particle system, and we need to enable custom vertex streams. By default, I think this is actually off, so just make sure you turn it on. And we only want one, so custom 1.x, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing because custom data will enable vector 1, and it will be the x, because of course if you have, you know, vector 4, it's x, y, z, w, so, you know, it has to be an x if you're only using a vector 1. But this is where, you know, the terminology breaks down a little bit because we're actually using b, which is z, which here is x, so, you know, a little bit weird. And because I have made this before, this graph already exists, but now what this will do is it will control the fade between, you know, the fire and the smoke over the particle's lifetime. So it's not something that we need to manually animate for, you know, every single time that we do something. Like if I wanted to, you know, this could last, you know, up to 12 seconds or something, and, you know, it will behave accordingly, you know, over the lifetime of this particle. You know, it will fade to smoke and then die. So that's all good, but I don't want that to last 12 seconds. So there we go, there's that. And just real quick, I'm going to grab the, I guess, the color from the existing material. Let's quickly compare something. So we have these two explosions, these two smokes, and it might be hard to tell a difference between them, but the Amplify version over here should be a little bit more liquidy, a little bit more smooth. You know, there's something extra happening there. And you may have noticed that when I was scrolling down before, that there was a normal map that was included. And basically, if I were to just pause this, you can see what's happening here. This still has, you know, some underlying movement that is always kind of undulating and happening across the particle system, whereas this one does not. So that's what we need to include within it. Let's go and put that in. And it's all pretty straightforward. The main thing that we want to do, of course, is to affect the UVs of the existing texture. So we're going to be doing that with a normal map. So let's just save a bit of time and copy paste these, but get rid of that. And let's just duplicate smoke texture, and we'll just call this one normal map. And then in node setting, I think the default for this is bump map, if you were wondering, the reference. And so then let's just put this here and that in there. And we need to, of course, change the default for this. You can leave this as none, like that's completely fine, but I do have a distortion normal map here. And again, this is just one that I created in Blender, just some ups and downs, and it is a tiling one. Anyway, change the type to normal, and then that should be fine. But now if we were to just, let's get a combine, because we only want the X and Y, or the RNG of the normal map, because blue contains nothing and there is no alpha channel. So yeah, we only want RNG. And we're going to multiply this with let's create a float. And this will be jiggle strength. We can make this actually, I think, into a slider. A slider could be nice. I think it's being a little weird again. I don't know what's happening, but okay, I'm gonna restart Unity again. I'll be back in a second. Here we are again. I don't know why these keep getting swapped over. I think a more professional YouTuber probably would have, restarted, but for me, it's like 7 in the evening and I haven't even had a cup of tea yet, so well, what am I to do? The other thing I just want to kind of point out is a lot of people think that I hate shader graph. That's not the case, and I'm not including these little glitches in because I want to shame them. I actually, I enjoy shader graph. There are things that I wish it did not do, or rather things that I wish it did. But no, I mean, it's free and it's great, so more power to you. Anyway, where were we? So jiggle strength, which I think I had... Oh, I was turning it into a slider. We'll put the default quite low, 0.2 maybe, maybe even less, but min should be 0. So yeah, slider, fine, great. And if we were to just plug this straight into there, things are gonna go wrong. They're gonna go kind of crazy. And you can see over here in the preview that some things are not quite right. And we want to affect our texture based on the normal map. We don't want to, completely overwrite the UVs of them. We want to affect the UVs that are already there. And the easiest way to do this that I know of is if we just get an add, and we'll just add and put that into there. And then we'll just get some UV coordinates again. Nothing special about these, just default UV coordinates, and kaboom. So now you've seen it change ever so slightly, maybe not enough, but now at least, you can see at lower values, it's just distorting the texture rather than just, not being applicable in the slightest. So that's what you want to do there. So obviously we need to be able to make this move. We have the strength, which we can control on the material, but we need it to move. And we're going to get that panning, and we're going to do that with a tiling and offset node. And we can leave the UVs as is. The tiling, if you wanted to, you could create your own property for the tiling. For me, there's no need. The offset is what we definitely want to be able to control though. So let's go into time. In fact, now let's just plug that straight into there just so we can see something immediately take effect. But go time and multiply. And then we're going to get ourselves a new float. And this will be our jiggle speed. I'm going to keep this at 0.2 as well, something kind of low. I don't fully remember what the values were before, but either way we can change them. It's all good. And so this and that goes straight into offset. And what this is going to do is it's going to offset on both the X and the Y. And you can see what it's doing over here. And let's just give this a save. But now I'm going to close this because I'm worried about it doing weird stuff again. So let's take a look at this. And at the moment, I guess it didn't take the defaults into account. We have jiggle speed, and I must not have hooked something up. Okay, yeah, I guess in all of the confusion from earlier, I've accidentally unticked exposed, so now that should exist on the material. Okay, yeah, so that is immediately doing something. Interesting though that not exposing it on the shader meant that it wasn't taking into effect. Not on the shader, sorry, on the material. You'd have thought that having the value in would be enough, but oh well. So yeah, there's that, and it's pretty good. It's a little too strong for my taste, so we can, tone down the strength. And of course the speed, you can have it do whatever you want, but I recommend, pretty low values. That is, it's pretty much, yeah, I mean, that is pretty much it. There is only one more thing I wanted to quickly mention, and that is if you see when the explosion kind of first happens and you have this distortion sphere, it's distorting, everything within the sphere, which is also kind of affecting the particle itself. It's making it more wobbly than maybe you might want. If you like it, then, by all means, keep it like that. What I would do on Amplify is I would actually just enable the back face to be on, and I would cull the front instead. But I don't think that exists in shader graph. We have the ability to make something two-sided, but you can't, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, please. From what I understand, you can't control which face gets culled. So the easiest way to do this is to just go into somewhere like Blender or whatever 3D package you have, and to just get a sphere that is, you know, like a meter in range, and just flip the normals yourself. So it's just, you know, it is an inverted sphere, so you don't have to do the flipping on the shader level. It's just that it exists on the geometry level. And then you could just, you know, throw that in. And if I just quickly get this as an example, so hopefully this will make a bit of sense. You can see how much it's distorting the particle system itself. And if we come down here to mesh, at the moment it's just using the default Unity sphere. But if I search for my one, which again is included in sphere invert, you can see immediately something there changed. And what that changed was, you can see now as this begins to shockwave out, it's really only affecting the edges, and that is unfortunately a byproduct of the grab pass. But the actual particle itself within the center is not getting, you know, massively distorted. And you can see this a lot more clearly if I just ramp up the refract strength here, something like that. And then I go back to using just that default sphere. So, you know, the regular backface cull. You can see, you know, it's acting like one of those stained glass windows, and it's just like obliterating everything within it or behind it. Yeah, so something to keep in mind. I'm just going to say goodbye, and don't forget that if you want the Amplify or the Shader Graph packages, it is all freely available for download over on my Patreon. Other than that though, yeah, I'm gonna go get a cup of tea right now. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.